Rahul sir and Pratik sir, I was just wishing was actually like to actually ask you a question, but what else, like what are the parts of IHMR actually you still remember about, like you wish to see once again, like you think about that when I'll visit IHMR after, like maybe after lockdown, or once upon, like after this I'll visit this area because this is my favorite one.
See, our classroom was the favorite place for us, where
Oh,
everybody was
okay.
sitting together. But now, after this lockdown,
Yeah.
and maybe a social distancing in place, we will be very difficult for us to sit each other. I mean, very near to each other.
Yeah.
But
Pratik ji, we are on online live.
okay, right.
So
Okay. And for
So
me, I think primarily, because I got access to computer lab for the first time in IHMR, I really liked that place, connected to internet and the world, and I still continue to cherish that, and it gave me a lot. So other than classroom, probably, but now everyone having their own laptop, computer, and smartphone, probably they won't understand. But 2004 was different, and probably 2001 and 3 must have been more different than what 2004 was.
Yeah.
Great. Let's start the show. Anupriya, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Warm welcome to the webinar. I am Anupriya Ravichandran, and alongside me is Mr. Yogesh Tejwani. We are the students of IIHMR University, Jaipur, and will be moderating today's session. We are very happy to share with you, all of you, that our university has bagged 11th rank in the NRIF rankings in the country and is ranked second in the state of Rajasthan. Our university is a pioneer in providing healthcare education, be it public health, hospital health management, pharmaceutical management, or rural management. We help government to frame some healthcare policies and are involved in high impact research and training for some national and international organizations such as the WHO, the United Nations, the World Bank, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to name a few. The next slide, please. Before I'm introducing the panelists for today, I would like to take some time to highlight the points of discussion today. The one advice probably we hear during COVID is to learn from the pandemic so as to not make any such mistakes in the future. So we'll be discussing about the lessons the global healthcare system has to learn to become more robust and responsive to a global crisis like COVID. Also, we'll be looking on the opportunities opened by COVID in terms of remote medical care. And at the same time, AI has started to substitute humans in workforce. How are we as an industry going to tackle this issue? Additionally, with the introduction of AI treatment algorithms, there are increased chances of patients being just seen as numbers, figures, and volumes. How are we going to ensure value-based health system in the future? COVID is in place. The pockets of the industry have shallowed. The rapid digitalization has to occur. So financial and technological intelligence is the need of the heart to ace the competitors. At the same time, now with this work from home thing trending in our lives, how are we going to actually concentrate on our work amidst the huge demands from the family? The psychological issues in the world is increasing. So how are we as an industry going to tackle the psychological issues right from regaining the trust of the patients and bringing back the mental wellness of the frontline workers? Last but not the least, with all these challenges in place, what is the most suited leadership style and what are the skill sets that are very crucial at this point of time to ace the competitors? So these are the points of discussion for the today. While I'm speaking this, I just remember one small quote said by John F. Kennedy, which says like the greatness of a school can be determined by what our alumnus contributes to our national life. We have two such profound alumnus of our IIHM University with us, Mr. Pratik Jain and Mr. Rahul Pandey. We are so happy to invite both of you to the webinar. Can I have the next slide, please? Mr. Pratik Jain. Mr. Pratik Jain belongs to the class of 2003 of IIHMR University. He has an MBA in Hospital and Health Management with nearly about 17 years of experience in the field of hospital. He started his career as a resident administrator in Narayana Health and has worked for many giants like Wockhardt, Fortis, Frost and Sullivan, and now is serving as a facility director at Narayana Health. The next slide. Our next panelist for today, Mr. Rahul Pandey. Mr. Rahul Pandey belongs to the class of 2006 of IIHMR University, where he did his MBA in Hospital and Health Management. With nearly about 14 years of experience in the health sector, he has worked for many organizations such as the NHM, the National Health Mission, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the World Bank, and has climbed all the way up to become the Operations Officer, Nutrition Population to the World Bank Group. With this introduction in place, and without any further ado, I now request Yogesh to start the discussion.
Thank you, Anupriya. And I welcome to both of the alumni, Mr. Pratik sir and Rahul sir. Starting with the first discussion point, Pratik sir, I would just ask you, what is your opinion in this post-COVID world? Like, why one doesn't have that luxury to work with fixed leadership models, right? And fluid leadership models had to be suited leadership style, because people do follow what their leader asks for. And in this tough situation, a leader has to take a decision, and it has to be dynamic. So what is your take on it? And like, what is your leadership style in this post-COVID situation nowadays?
See, in my opinion, any leader has to have, in this current situation, or maybe in a normal situation, has to have two basic leadership quality, and which holds true in today's scenario also. The one is basically that he has to be very patient leader, and second thing, he has to have very quick decision-making ability. In this current scenario, we have faced so many situations and challenges that where we have to be really very patient, and we have to take decisions in such a way which is in the interest of our patient, in the interest of our employees, staff. To my mind, when you talk about this, the term which has been now, everybody is speaking about VUCA world. That VUCA is basically, V stand for volatility, and U stand for uncertainty, C stand for complexity, and probably A stand for ambiguity. But to me personally, when we talk about V, stand for vision. See, when you have a volatility, this kind of volatile market, if you have a proper vision in terms of what you need to do, we can easily convert that volatility into a vision kind of a thing. So second thing, when you talk about U for uncertainty, for me, U is basically the understanding about the situation. See, when you have a solid understanding about the situation, you can deal with any kind of uncertainty which is there in the market right now. When you talk about complexity, and for me, complexity, C stands for clarity. So a leader should have very clear-cut clarity among the kind of an execution plan which you have thought of for the hospital, for the staff in the current situation, for their patients. So for me, to deal with the complex situation, everybody knows that hospital is a very complex situation, a complex unit right now, and to work in the interest of the patient without hampering the patient care, it is very important that we have to have a very clarity among ourselves in terms of the process, protocol, systems which we follows. And the last one which we talk about, ambiguity, A is for ambiguity. For me, A is for agility. That means you have to have a very quick decision-making ability, so that you can take decision fast. Everybody will be surprised that, and maybe probably we have never thought in our lifetime that we could be wearing these kind of suits and as an administrator, and we'll be sitting here and working in a hospital environment like this. So after post-COVID, I think the scenario has been totally changed. And basically, when you talk about leadership quality and style, I know in today's world, we have been doing a job of when we started our career as a management trainee, when we are doing a job as a trainee also, nowadays we have to do the same thing. We have to go to each and every process one more time, right from the beginning. to a kind of a the role which every leader is playing right now. So basically, in after this post-COVID era, I think the working pattern of a hospital will certainly is going to change. In our hospital also, we have been fortunate enough to take quick decision in terms of and in anticipation of these kind of situation. And touch wood, we have saved a lot of lives. We have saved a lot of patients' life. And to me, COVID is something which is everybody know that COVID is not going to be going it for 1 month or 2 months. It is now going to live with us for a year time or maybe more than that, till the time we get a permanent resolution for this, for permanent resolution of this problem. So I think in today's world, everybody's, whether he is a management trainee, he is an administrator, or he is in some kind of active HOD role, everybody have to play a team role. And I want to salute all my healthcare workers who are continuously working day and night for fighting this issue worldwide and globally. When you talk about our hospital, this 80 days, I mean, the last 80 days has gone so tough that we have never thought that this kind of situation will come in our lifetime. It was so challenging that we are not able to go to our home. We have spent 80 days continuously outside our family, and our thanks to all our family which they have supported us in this time, that we are fighting it for our patients, not for them. So this is a kind of a selfless or approach which everybody has followed. All our nurses, doctors, paramedical staff, admin staff, marketing, housekeeping staff, everybody was so supportive that we have made a very comprehensive team to fight this out. So this is a kind of an practical experience which we have faced, and I'm sure that we will be coming, very soon we will be coming out of this.
Okay, sir. So, in talking about even the Narayana Healthcare, like the place you're working right now, what are the changes that you have not made? Because none of us have ever thought about such situation would arise. But what are these what have the changes? The major changes have been seen or be experienced, and where the leadership has to play a major role in upcoming areas.
See, basically, what we have done, we have identified various teams. We have made various teams. And we have converted our hospital into a fort. So once I say that, that means that any individual walking inside the hospital will be screened. Following, we have converted our hospital into green zone as well as red zone. We have made dedicated pathways for all the specialties, so that what will happen with this, that there should be very much minimum interaction of individuals among themselves, and then probably we can follow all the standard operating protocols or safety measures which are there. Also, from the day one, we are protecting our employees by giving them personal protective equipments like PPEs, face shield, masks, gloves, anything which is required for their safety, which we have provided to them. Dedicated pathways, we have identified leaders within, whether when you talk about clinical leaders, non-clinical leaders, we have identified those leaders in different teams. We have made one plan. We have set down like a war room, and we have called we have called those small teams which are going to go into particular dedicated area and perform their duties. And you will be surprised to know people who have not people who are not in the leadership role has excellently performed, and they have shown that kind of capabilities to handle any kind of such kind of tough situation. So in a process that we have also come out to know that people who can demonstrate that leadership quality and probably fight out with such kind of situation in a much better way which we have even thought of. So when you talk about lowest class, like class 4 employees or maybe housekeeping guys, they have even performed themselves in a team and saved our patients from such a kind of a tough situation. And still they are working 24/7, not going to their home, dedicatedly performing their duty. And heads off to them.
Okay, so I also think that the place where leaders like you are working would surely be making an example for others as well. Let's move on to the next discussion point. That is, I would like to ask the point from the Rahul sir. Rahul sir, in the situation like COVID-19, already we know the leaders like you have become more robust and responsive to the global crisis. Now, I just wanted to ask is what the students, like students in the upcoming health sector, the students who are looking forward for the health sector should learn from this crisis, because to prepare themselves for the future.
So Yogesh, one thing I think everyone talks about crisis is an opportunity, but I'm little against this philosophy. The problem is you don't learn in one day; you learn over a period of time, and it starts with your schooling, and it happens with your experience as well. Having said that, what I have done, and that's why probably I gave the example of computer lab as well. I connected to internet very. Kind of it became a very important connect for me because I had that hunger for learning and knowing more. What I've realized that keeping yourself updated and motivated makes a lot of sense in these times. And when I say updated, what you do in the era of social media, in era of Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and all, where everyone is posting all kind of information, you should have your own filters as well. That what is the right information? Like I'll give you an example. A couple of weeks back, there was a news from Israel that they have developed an antibody medicine, and people started in news media posting the very known newspapers and the online portals posting that the Israel has created a vaccine for COVID-19. So now, if you don't know what an antibody medicine and what a vaccine is, you'll also fail for that jingoism. So one, you need to be very updated and motivated. Two, understanding the data and the indicators and the way the public policy works. And I hats off to Mr. Pratik Jain and his team, what they are doing right now in most of the hospitals, whether it's public and private, the way they are trying to deal with. But probably if our public health systems were more advanced and more responsive to a pandemic-like situation, we might not be seeing that much of load in our hospital setups. So our public policy dialogues also become very critical. So that need to be thought through very clearly. The third point, which I always tell people, that even if you are updated with the data sets or indicators or information or epidemiological information, don't go overboard within your own organizations. Try to keep a balance. When you are having discussion, try to share only the information which may be useful, because going overboard in these times, everyone being emotionally very charged may be really difficult and people may think that you are just being too pushy for certain things. One point which I would like to underline over here very clearly: this all doesn't happen in a day, or it can be taught in a college or a management school in one go. It happens over a period of time. But if you have hunger for keeping yourself updated with right kind of information, if you understand the difference between a rate and a ratio, if you understand why some indicator can be used at what place, why an outcome ratio should be used in a COVID-like situation and not a per million case ratio or something like that. All of that makes a lot of sense when you try to upgrade yourself as a leader, also as a public health professional, when you are trying to support your own organization and also colleagues and peers in the industry.
So very well said about this point, that it takes time. It doesn't take a day to learn everything. So since by talking about the students for the taking the 2 years MBA program, or the students who have already cleared, or the students who have 1 year left, they have a time period now to enter in the market, to enter in the industry. What should they learn from this crisis? Or how should they prepare themselves?
So one thing which I don't know, Yogesh, probably last year I was in the alumni meet in Jaipur. I don't know whether you were there at that point of time or not. One thing I mentioned very clearly, that whether it's a hospital, and Mr. Jain will probably agree with me, whether it's a hospital or a public health side, unless you start from a very grassroots level. When I'm saying grassroots, I don't want you all to go and work in the villages, but at least where the public policy implementation, and that's in the public health side, I can say at least at the district or the state level to start with, where you really understand how a public policy developed at the central government level, translated at the state level in form of the guidelines, and implemented at the grassroots level. Unless you don't understand the complete ecosystem, it will be really difficult for anyone to really comprehend when they reach at the top level that how the entire ecosystem works. Mr. Jain started at a small level in Narayana, and then he grew at a different level. Now he really understands the entire ecosystem. And similar has been the case with me. I started as a district program manager, then I worked as a state program manager. Then I came to the national government and Ministry of Health, and now with the World Bank. Now, if someone talks to me about healthcare system in India, at least I know what the ecosystem looks like. So So
Yeah.
do your management course for sure, but try to have as much as variety of experience in next 10 years. That will help you really grow in your latter career. Probably you can jump today at a very senior level, but when a day after that you really need to go a level up and you really need to demonstrate those skills, you may not know actually what is happening at the ground reality. So that's very key in my view for everyone to keep in mind.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. It was very insightful. I'll ask Anupriya to take forward discussion points, please. Anupriya, please unmute. We can't hear you. Yeah.
Good evening, both of you. Sir, my next question that I would like to pose is to Mr. Pratik Jain. Sir, recently I studied about, I had a small article wherein they stated that there is going to be there's diabetes app where they're going to develop an algorithm, and once the blood sugar level is fed in, and the algorithm will by itself suggest the treatment plan. So with this kind of algorithms in place, there are increased chances of patients being merely seen as numbers, figures, targets, and volume. So how to ensure value-based healthcare system in this situation?
See, basically, I don't agree with that kind of a statement when somebody says that patients are seeing as a volume or maybe a numbers. In our system, we never used to treat them like volume or numbers. In the contrary, we are the only organizations where we treat wide spectrum of patients. When you talk about pediatrics to adult, to every spectrum we cover, and we are one of the most affordable healthcare provider in the country. And probably for us, the basic principle which we follow is the patient first, and the money comes as a kind of a secondary to us. When you talk about algorithm which are going to change the entire dynamics, I don't think so, because when you talk about an algorithm which is being generated for kind of creating a treatment plan for diabetic, but what about the other comorbid condition which already exists with the patient? How they are going to link that? And I don't think that the machine is going to be replacing doctors soon. Maybe not in a near decade kind of a thing. That's just my personal perception in the healthcare experience so far, because there are so many multiple comorbid conditions which exist with a patient, and to analyze and to come to a particular treatment plan, not only one discussion or maybe a multiple discussion with regarding to cross consultation with different specialties required, so that it is going to be deciding the kind of a treatment course of a patient. So machine can only help to arrive to a certain good decision making process in the treatment part, but machine is going to treat the patient which is slightly a remote distant dream from me. That is what it is in my opinion, like that.
Yeah. So I have one question, like now telemedicine is growing. So
Yeah.
the one statement that has been said is that there will be a lack of doctor-patient relationship. Do you think that this will affect adversely on the patient
No,
or the
it
psychology
depends.
of the patient or the doctor?
Yeah. See, basically, the psychology anyway, the kind of a doctor-patient relationship is relatively disturbed in current scenario. But still, that kind of empathy has to come from both the end. When you talk about telemedicine has certain limits in terms of performing or maybe chalking out some kind of treatment plan for the patient, because telemedicine cannot solve all your, it can use as a diagnostic tools, but as a therapeutic tool, it will not be able to, it can also, it's one of a kind of an assistant model, when it can, where it is going to assist you in some type in remotely. If you can't come to the doctor, you will be able to connect with them, understand, or maybe kind of first primary response with a doctor can be established by that. But when it comes to really therapeutic activities, he has to definitely visit to the doctor and have the kind of a personal intervention.
So can we see telemedicine as if like filtering through telemedicine and calling the patients for physical examinations and stuff.
Yeah, basically, it's going to more or less the physician-driven model is going to be more strengthened because of this telemedicine as well as the video consultation which is going on. That means, if there is it is a kind of a saying that it is when it is really required to visit a hospital, then you visit a hospital. I mean, don't go hospital just for sake of common cold, common flu, common fever. So actually, when you require to go to hospital, because everybody knows that hospital is not a very simple, it is always there's always a risk of infection which exists. That question will always exist in a hospital. So nowadays, we also have experienced the kind of a trend when we see around 500 to 600 patients a day. Now, maybe 30% has been converted into video consultation. And most of their queries as well as this thing has been being solved by video consultation. But definitely when they require some kind of intervention, admissions, maybe emergency situation, they are visiting us and we are taking care of them.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for giving your overview about the telemedicine and the AI. So my next question is to Mr. Pandey. Sir, commonly the one sentence we probably hear now amongst people is leaders to have adaptive behavior, to have a human skill and stuffs. Like managers are now asked to demonstrate traits like self-awareness, emotional agility, and empathy and stuffs. But humans are always complex and it's always hard to understand them. So with all this in place, how can managers be emotionally intelligent to have an adaptive behavior with their employees?
Okay, I think that's a very, very important point to have this on this platform. And one thing comes to my mind, Vince, I learned this very early, and probably it also comes with how you have been brought up since you were born, you were growing up, and all of those days. One word comes to my mind always is respect. When we talk about respect could be for many things. Respect could be for individual, for peers, for students, for friends, and it could be in different forms and ways. But respect is a very, very key integral part of the entire process of whether you talk about self-awareness or keeping yourself motivated. Unless you respect others, you can't really command that respect from others towards yourself. And when there is that kind of synergy is not there, your brain and your heart don't try to match with each other's wavelengths. So that becomes very critical. The second thing, when we work in the public health or the healthcare is a sector where you see diversity a lot. You see rich, you see poor, you see vulnerable, you see different color, you see X color, Y color, different gender. And you have to be very cognizant of your actions around all of that. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, you are saying something, you're doing something which is making someone uncomfortable or not giving that respect which that person wants. All of that, when you imbibe in your cultural or social upbringing in your own life, it has a very positive impact as a leader when you grow. So my simple point is start respecting people. It's not about not being assertive. I'm not saying respecting others means being submissive. No, it's not. You be assertive. You put your points up front. You have discussion, not arguments. You have discussions. You find out situations where you can put your points forward in the conducive environment. But at the same time, it becomes very critical that how you nurture yourself and how you really put forward yourself in the entire ecosystem. Another thing which comes to, and 2 points I would like to highlight, and I have been in these situations. If you see something happening to your friends, your peer, your juniors, your colleagues, your subordinates, your employees, something which is not right, stand up for that. Unless you do that, unless you bring that habit in your own heart, in your own mind, things will not change even for you. So one is that. The last thing which I do for myself, those who follow me on Twitter or some of the social media platforms, I write a lot. I write my own poetry in Hindi, I write in Urdu, I write put my blogs. You need to have some hobbies as well to vent out. Many people are introverts, they can't speak that much. Learn to write, learn to express. So respect, have some hobbies, make sure that you nurture yourself in such a way that you are able to work in the entire ecosystem. You can work. And the one thing which I learned from my father, and I can speak in Hindi, that आप पैसे कमा सकते हैं, लेकिन व्यवहार कमाना बड़ा मुश्किल होता है. I'll put that in Hindi, and that has been there with me for since I left my home, and that was the last thing he said before I left my home in 1999. So I think some of those things really work when you really put in your life and try to take it forward. Over.
Thank you, sir. So the respect and standing up for your peers are very important. These skills are to be learned from small, but it's not late. We can learn even now. Over to you, Yogesh, for further proceedings.
Thank you so much. Pratik, sir, I had a question for you. Right now, we are seeing that there's a rapid digitalization, right? And trending work from home culture. Work-life balance is becoming a Herculean task. What is your advice for youngsters so as to have a perfect work-life balance in the place? Because I think even I don't know, but maybe at your place as well, might be some of people would be working from their home if they're not required in the hospital. So how to have a work-life balance in such situation?
See, the industry which we are in, I think work-life balance is little, not little difficult. It is really challenging.
Yes,
when you see that people who are working from home, but majority of the people, what we have done is we have made some teams so that probably everybody should get an equal chance of working on site as well as off site. So I think that is a more when I say to the youngsters, they should first of all it's a good opportunity for them now to learn a lot of things which they could have been thought of learning in a kind of when they're in the normal routine. So in my advice that you should learn new things. What Rahul has said that absolutely I am going to echo that first you have to respect others as well as try to sharpen your skills. I mean, this is the right time to sharpen your skills. The moment you do that, probably, it's always like that work life. Even when you talk about family, it is quite now all IT companies are doing the same way. But healthcare, it is little difficult to work from home because majority of them are things need to be done from on site. So I think we have to. I mean, we are the kind of people who are never going to make that work-life balance.
Truly, sir. I understand your point, and the area now we are in the health sector. Somewhere around it has actually with the COVID-19, it has actually shown the real importance of the health sector area in the country like India, where we need to bring up more investment and the part of the expenditure in the healthcare industry. Okay, so my next point of discussion is with Rahul sir. Rahul sir, first of all, before asking the question, I would just would like to, since you mentioned that you write poetries, do you mind if you want to share some of them or any one of them? Since in the era of COVID-19, have you written some of any of the poetry on COVID-19? I think so.
I have, but I write a lot in Hindi and Urdu. I can recite, but one of two lines I'll put it of one of the recently written ghazals, which I put it in the public domain.
Irshad.
हौसला मगर मुमकिन है एक वक्त के बाद, हौसला मगर मुमकिन है एक वक्त के बाद कदम बढ़ाना पड़ता है. We can't just stay there. We have to really put our foot forward. So what Mr. Jain and team is doing, what everyone is doing in the sector, I think the motivation is key, but we have to take the next steps. We can't just be motivated and remain there. So it'll become very long, so I'll just stop there. But that's one of my favorite lines written recently.
I'll follow your Instagram and Facebook to read others as well now. And okay, so point of discussion for the webinar is, sir, how the industry is going to deal with the psychological issues right now, like basically from regaining trust of patients to assuring the mental wellness of frontline workers, because COVID-19 it has really affected people mentally. It is already on each one of our heads, because in 24 hours, 24/7, we just talk about COVID-19 these days. Nothing else around the world, even the person would not know what is happening next to the house, but he would know about COVID-19 because he's continuously on news channels. He's seeing what is happening around the world, and even the news channels are covering just coronavirus these days. So there's a mental effect, and I really think that it has already like affected people mentally. Like people are so they have developed a fear from this disease, and maybe due to fake news and the people all around them, since they are just talking about this disease. So how the industry is going to deal with the psychological issues from like patients to the frontline workers?
Okay, I think again a very important and interesting question to discuss. One question again comes to my mind: why we are thinking now? Means were we not preparing for any? Because health sector has always been strained, whether it's pandemic or not pandemic. Pandemic probably now more. But look at the footfall in any leading private hospitals or even the district hospitals or AIIMS or anywhere. The health sector, healthcare delivery staff has been always under strain. We never thought of that at that particular time. One of the things which comes to mind is where is the environment of trust? And Mr. Jain brought that very clearly in reference to the discussion on telemedicine, that there is empathy between doctor and patient, and that link has to be there. And we talked about value-based healthcare as well, where we always know the value is for the patients, but have the patients been really at the center of the discussion? Have the healthcare providers who are there? Probably not. Now the time is the issue right now. Another issue is, since the COVID has come and pandemic has come, and everyone thinks that, okay, probably we need to do something for our employees. Everyone is just saying, bringing the behavior change consultants, doing the training. Okay, go for this webinar, do that webinar, mental wellness, all of that. Right now, they are so strained to just provide services. They don't have time for all this. They need to be left to do what they are supposed to be doing. Probably my suggestion is, you keep asking everyone house, and as Mr. Jain said, probably in the hospital setup, it becomes very critical, because every level they have created leaders who actually should reach out to their own team and ask if everyone is fine, not fine. And we have been doing this in our organization. Our HR has been reaching out to everyone, finding out what is happening and how things have been. Right now, I think we have to keep it a little light. We really should not really push too much. But once the tide is bit down, probably we need to really invest a lot on the psychological and behavior issues of the healthcare provider. And the other point which you raised about the frontline worker, they are really stressed. I work very closely with the Anganwadi workers and Asha workers in our national nutrition mission, the Poshan Abhiyan program, which we are funding from with government of India. And we have been reaching out to workers in almost 11 states. We did a series recently, and it's available in the public domain as well. But what an amazing grit these ladies have, these women have. They are like, we can crib all about the frontline workers. Oh, they may not be working. They are just sitting at home. You guys should see what's happening at the ground. They're right there. When they're not able to reach their beneficiary, they're doing WhatsApp video call, because 8 lakh Anganwadi workers have been provided with the smartphones. They're doing WhatsApp video call with beneficiaries. They're calling them, doing home counseling, breastfeeding counseling. They're doing the complementary feeding counseling. So they are also innovating a lot. Are we providing enough support to them? Are we providing them an ecosystem where they can function? Probably not enough, but there has been some effort from even the government of India and various other governments as well, where they have, like in some of the state government, they brought in that Anganwadi workers and frontline workers will also be considered as part of the entire COVID response system. And if whatever package or insurance or any coverage will come, will be available for them as well. So some of the states have started doing it. So frontline is strained, the healthcare providers are strained, but probably now we need to take a little easy. But once the tide is down, we need to really work hard to make sure that we do work on the trust, on the psychological system for sure.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. And I really wish that we would be actually working now, since we have got a lesson from this pandemic. So we would be actually working on the health issues now after this. Over to you, Nupriya.
My next question is to Mr. Jain. Sir, we are now reading a lot of economic articles and stuffs where there is going to be anticipated rise in the labor costs. There is going to be liquidity of funds, higher inventory costs, and a lot of financial issues have raised during this COVID. And in the near future, the hospitals should also invest a huge chunk of money towards digitalization. how are the hospital industry going to balance this, the dearth of money and the need to invest a huge chunk of money in digitalization? How it is going to be balanced?
See, I think now worldwide, all the government has realized that how important the healthcare is. Where now in today's scenario, every industry is struggling in terms of retaining their people. They're laying off jobs. The healthcare industry is one industry which is trying to retain their people, which are now trying to do each and every possible single steps to retain those employees who are working for them. Third thing, when you talk about economy, uh, I I think in terms of the investment, the government has to play a major role in terms of infusion and helping, like what US did for their healthcare organization. Similarly, India has also has to support the private healthcare sector because it contributes around 60% of the workload. And when you talk about really 80% of the patients' workload has been catered by private healthcare. So it is very important for the government to formulate such certain kind of plans and policies which are going to help or maybe helping all these private sectors in terms of collaborating with them. Maybe PPP is little. I mean I wanted to discuss with Rahul also that what is the scope of a PPP when it comes to, and what is the whether it is really efficient to have a PPP model when it comes to healthcare. But after this situation, I hope when the government has realized that how important is to invest, and even people who have realized that how important is to invest in terms of healthcare, so that in this kind of situation, like everybody is exposed that how our healthcare system works. Now, really, the private player has played a very key role in combination with the government to fight this out, and still till date also they are doing it. Despite of that, we are having a lot of a lot of challenges in terms of managing finances. The patient load has come down, but still, I think this is going to be the way forward, where patients are going to be more on a video consultation. More investment goes into digital kind of a platform where you can showcase your services digitally, what you are doing in a traditional way. Earlier. So I think both of the player has to come together to sort out this issue.
Rahul sir, would you like to answer his question, like the PPP model?
Yeah, so I think I was smiling when he was asking about that. What we have done in one of the, like, if most people know, we generally lend money to the government. So we have lent some $100 million to Uttarakhand government. And as part of that, probably in India for the first time, there are 3 clusters. When I talk about the cluster, it includes district hospital, 2 CHCs, mobile health vans, and a couple of more facilities in one cluster have been handed over to private providers. And one cluster has been running very successfully. And if Mr. Jain wants, it's our own alumni who now just recently shifted, but he was managing Himalayan Hospital in Dehradun, who was handling this PPP cluster, and we got the 2 more clusters. So the bank itself has been supportive of PPPs, and we did try to bring in some in the past, but it didn't work out. Probably the Uttarakhand model, which we have now successfully, and we just closed, I think the third one is being closed. Two providers are already on board. Probably next 1 to 2 years will show that how not just a diagnostic facility or not just a lab services, not just ambulatory services, but the entire hospital or healthcare system can be given to private providers to run as well. And that's why we also named them the service provider and not really a private player or a private sector over there in the PPP engagement as well.
Mr. Jain, I have one more question. I'm very curious about this question. Do you think the healthcare industry will move towards giants like Microsoft and Google and stuff?
I think they have already in that kind of a particular direction now. But see, healthcare industry was always like a giant. People have recognized and realizes this right now. That is what the difference is.
And one more question is there, like we have platforms like Practo and all now. Do you think now private hospitals will start their own platforms like Fortis platform or Narayana platform, or how is it? Do you think there is chances of developing such kind of platforms?
See, this Practo platform and other private platform which are already there, they're basically in terms of diagnostic platforms that we already had it right now. Like we already have a platform for having video consultations. The entire India, if you want to have any kind of video consultation, you can do it from any of our specialists. So, and when you talk about inpatients, EMR, PACS, digitization of this thing, that things we already, that system is already in place. So probably there's no need of developing an additional platform because it's more of a consulting driven platform and more of a diagnosis kind of a thing, platform.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. My next question is to Mr. Pandey. Sir, now the point of care devices and telemedicine has grown robustly in few months. It is said that it has been grown like a decade. So do you think this will solve the dearth of doctors in rural areas, or is there any gap to be filled so as to get the maximum benefits of the technology?
Okay, I think some part was already answered by Mr. Jain, so I will not repeat some of the things which, and I think he mentioned all the right things over there related to telemedicine and how it should work. One of the things which we need to understand very clearly, and I'll just repeat one point, is like the telemedicine can only resolve the issues related to the consultation or even the diagnostics over video. It's like a video diagnostic where you show some of the reports or you tell your symptoms and someone sitting behind the computer is able to respond to your queries. But when it comes to anything invasive or surgical, anything therapeutic which need to be taken, you need to have doctors in place. And what we have realized that probably if not primary health centers, in the government setup I'm talking, probably if not at the primary health centers, you would still need doctors and providers available from community health centers and above. The reason is very simple. If you don't have doctors and providers at the community health center levels, people have to travel really far from some of the interior areas to reach even to the district hospitals, or otherwise there may be some unorganized, unqualified private sector, which many of us don't even consider the private sector, which are completely unorganized. They may be able to provide you not so great quality services, which may really hamper. But you know what? We miss one or two things, not just in telemedicine, but in any of the new innovation, we miss one thing very clearly. We bring everything in silos. Okay, here is a telemedicine, a solution. No, that will not work. It has to be part of the broader health system. How does it complement the entire thing? Have you built your referral chain? Have you built linkages with the hospitals? Have you really built linkages with the providers at the facilities? Is it responding to your broader healthcare goals? If not, don't bring telemedicine just for the sake of showing that we have telemedicine in place. If it helps you achieve your goals and targets, which I think it can to large extent in certain areas, but having this part of the broader healthcare system goals and part not in silos will work. And I can fortunately say that I have been part of at least in 3 states where we have invested and where we have pushed back very successfully of having a piecemeal telemedicine programs, and where we are saying no, bring it part of the broader system, will support it, otherwise we will not. And the governments have finally come to an agreement to it. It's also a different kind of relationship over there with the government. Point of care devices certainly are going to grow, and we have to see how it comes. But I think Mr. Jain will also be able to answer when pharmaceutical regulations and rules govern the devices industry as well. I don't know how well we are prepared even at the policy level to see the growth of the devices or point of care industry.
So telemedicine has to become a part of the broader system, so has to get the fullest things out of it. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Over to you, Yogesh.
Yeah. Prateek, sir. So my next question is from you. We have already been talking about the artificial intelligence and telemedicine and basically how the system has now changed. So what a person actually, since the students, what they should actually do, prepare themselves to gain a competitive advantage over artificial intelligence so that they can actually also get an image or get a place in the industry. So what is a trait a person can develop that cannot be stolen by artificial intelligence? Would be my question.
See, basically, the kind of a budding administrators, they need to first understand the basic of healthcare. I mean, you have to start with what Rahul has said earlier, that it has to be start from the grassroots level. Grassroots level does not mean that you should go in villages, but what he has mentioned that when you actually go into the field, when you actually try to have get a practical exposure in terms of field, it is totally different from what you learn in institute. So my only sincere request to all of them is that you should always keep updated yourself with the latest development which is happening in the field of healthcare, not even in healthcare, like the entire ecosystem, as well as when you really talk about the healthcare, maybe the kind of technologies which are coming into the place, that has to be also, you need to keep updated with that technology. To me, artificial intelligence or something is like a big term. When when you really see practicality of it, you should be aware of the basic fact first. And when it comes to the implementation part, artificial intelligence can only be a can be used as a helpful tool for you. So it is good that you should also keep learning about the new things which is coming into the coming right now in future. But still, you have to stick to your basics. The moment you know your basics, nobody can still fool you in terms of when you come to actual leadership position. You know exactly what is happening at what level. And when you talk about complex situations like hospital, every area is very critical in terms of evaluating your performance for your maybe top line, or maybe you're cutting the cost, maybe revenue generation, effective clinical outcomes. So I think basics are more important.
Yeah, truly, sir. Moving forward for the Rahul sir, I have my next point of discussion with you, sir. How to make a health system resilient to fight to such pandemics, basically going beyond hospitals. So, since COVID-19 has actually forced us to think about that, how should a health system should be like strong enough, because at the point of like at the present scenario, what we are only thinking or what we are talking about is why our health system is not so strong to tackle all this. So how to make a health system resilient to fight such pandemics?
So Yogesh, I think there are few things which we need to keep in mind before we talk about how to make the system resilient. Hospitals are very, very, very integral part of the entire healthcare ecosystem, but that's not everything. And if a country's 2 or 3% population ends up being in hospital, everything will break. And we have seen in many countries right now in Italy or some other parts, that if your public health measures are not strong and everyone becomes so critical that they have to avail the hospital services, probably public and private combined in any country may not be even able to help with number of beds and ventilators and all that support system. But the point is, are we investing enough in everything else? And within India, there are examples. I'll suggest you guys to read about something called Tamil Nadu model and Kerala model, 2 states in South,
Okay.
which very, very advanced level of indicators. But if you ask me, they both work very differently. While Tamil Nadu has a huge public sector-oriented model where they have invested a lot on the frontline workers, the community level interventions, epidemiological tracking of diseases, making more research focus. Kerala has more dealt with service-oriented model where they have availed the services of the private sector in most cases and got their indicators really in a good shape. Having said that, what we need to do probably in most of the countries, we need to really invest a lot on prevention, research, epidemiological research, vaccines. And if we do this, situation like this will come again. And if those who have been following this pandemic, they know that every 100 to 110 years or 90 years, you get a situation like this. And what happens when this situation comes, we all go gung-ho about, okay, we'll work on this. And then again, we forget because the situation, we don't get this kind of situation again for next 100 years. But one more important point is, again, I'll say this is not the right time to change the entire system or the framework. You can't do that. Suddenly, if you want a Bihar or UP to change their entire ecosystem on the way they work, it will break even the existing system which is responding. So you have to wait a little bit for this situation to get over, but you need to invest. Last point, I'll put it over here, whether it's a 2.5% of GDP or 3% of GDP or even 1.5% of GDP. Where are you investing? And even in the hospital parlance, I'll say, whether much investment is going on monitoring oxygens, because we know in COVID-19 like situation, there are a lot of silent hypoxia, which person gets so terrible condition and the symptoms don't even show. and it can only be monitored through monitoring oxygen levels, and whether it can be done through 1800 rupees device called pulse oximeter on a more regular basis, so that we can prevent people from reaching ventilator stage. So lot of management and lot of thought process need to go in over there, and we need to be very clear that hospitals are required, but at the same time, prevention, behavior, epidemiology, research, vaccine, all of that need to be also focused. Unfortunately, we have not done enough in those areas, and we need to do more.
Somewhere around, sir, like in the coming future, do this healthcare cost can get increased for the common people due to this?
Sorry, you are breaking a little bit.
Am
you are breaking a little bit. Can you repeat?
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was just asking that due to this, is the healthcare cost will increase for the common public? Because I was just going through some of the brochures of a private hospital, and they gave a one-day chart, basically the one-day menu card, what you say, for treatment of COVID-19, which has actually reached to 50,000 rupees, starting from 50,000. That is for a day. And getting
we all know which hospital you are talking, because it has been in social media and everywhere being shared. I will not probably go on that, and Mr. Jain probably can answer some of those questions. But from my point of view, whether it's a public or private, there has to be some rationale behind costing. And private, if it's a free economy, they have to look at their trade-offs. And if they are not getting enough patients, and they're only getting limited patients, they will also have to make their profit somewhere. So they will have to do some adjustments over there. But if public health investment is going to go ahead a lot, and they are investing a lot on the public side, probably some of the load on the private sector should also decline. But right now, whether the cost will go up or remain same, it's very difficult to say, because there is so much. It's a volatile situation. Even government is thinking at local level. Health being a state subject, many states are coming with their own arbitrary processes of regulating or making rules which are working either in favor or not in favor. So we have to wait and see. But yeah, there are because now the infection prevention methods, now some of the other investments in the hospitals will go up, which somewhere, if it is private hospitals, they have to make money for those enhanced investments as well. Public sector, even if it is free, if they want to make sure that the people avail those services, they have to do huge transformation in the public sector. Patient-centric, quality, cleanliness becomes a very important, it's a very simple thing, but becomes very important area, even if people want to avail services. So that's it from my side.
Prateek sir, would you like to answer the point of healthcare increase in healthcare cost in private area now?
Yes, definitely. The healthcare cost is going to be increased not because of the treatment cost, because of the kind of cost which is going into the private, PPEs. So probably government, if we can have some kind of a support from the government, where they can bear such kind of cost, and we can provide more volume of patient to be treated in all of our setup. So I think that government also have to extend some kind of support, where these kind of costs which has been come up in terms of taking care of the kind of COVID patients. So it will be really helpful for private sector to also be free from that aspect, and try to focus more on the treatment part of the for the patient. Because rest of the costs are the same as pre-COVID period. So there is no sudden change of cost, that one thing is costing 10 rupees, now it is costing 100 rupees. It is not like that. But still, if you get some kind of support from the government, because healthcare establishment cost is going day by day. So some kind of relief when you talk about in terms of GST, in terms of input for medical devices, if you get some kind of GST inputs GST free kind of an input from the government, it was really going to help us in terms of cutting those kinds of establishment cost.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you so much. Over to you, Anupriya.
Sir, the question is to Mr. Jain. Sir, now it is said that the NCDs are set to rise, and it is also said that the build-up cases will turn up once the pandemic is over, hopefully, and all the pending acute surgeries has to be performed. So now that the healthcare, the physicians are already stressed and strained, now they are not going to get any kind of rest after the pandemic, even after the pandemic, because they have to deal with the increased number of these NCDs, the acute surgeries, and all. Don't you think this would overboard doctors, or will it be like overworking for doctors?
No, see, basically, when you talk about NCDs, India is becoming global capital of NCDs now, and probably COVID is one of the COVID is something which is kind of an addition to the workload which we were already experiencing. But when you talk about the planned surgeries which need to be done on time, has to be done on time, because if the once the patient become inoperable, I mean, it is one of the most, it's kind of a crime when you don't operate a patient which need to be this thing. So what values which we follow is that, no patient should just go away from the system due to COVID in terms of, non-performing of their surgeries. So we have to treat patient. I mean, that is what the ideal is. And I mean, heads off to all the state governments which are really helping us in terms of supporting us in terms of treating the existing patient, as well as they have also already zonalized in terms of levels wide decided. They've already decided the kind of level the COVID hospital should be like that. So probably most of the private player has also come out or maybe stepped in front in taking some kind of a lead in terms of giving number of beds to the government for treating COVID patient. So most of the things like private player as well as public player now have to do elective surgeries. I mean, they cannot do away with that. We are not able to operate because of this thing, and COVID is just an addition to the stress. That's all. But this stress is the amount, the kind of percentage of this stress is so much that obviously it is going to take some time to come out of it. But elective treatment has to continue.
So how do you think can doctors refresh themselves or from all these things?
All in our setup, I request not only doctors, all of my employees, all the frontline workers or maybe managers. I always stress that you have to go to your traditional system of working. When you talk about yoga, Ayurveda, these are something which is the kind of a boon to all of us. We have never realized the value of these systems, but still, once you really follow the system, personally, if you build your immunity to an extent where these kind of the disease or this kind of virus will not be able to affect you. So you have to follow those traditional systems. Like I used to always guide them that you please do half an hour yoga in the morning without fail. So and some kind of breathing exercise which they need to do, so that they have to be stress free doing all this exercise.
Sir, and one question that is like from the university, from on behalf of the students of university, is like, sir, now what is that crucial step? What is that thinking that you had when you are selecting your hospital stream, when you're selecting it in your second year? What was your mentality? Why did you choose hospital the second year? Why didn't you go for health?
See, these questions, I don't know, we have answered this question from not now, from last 20 years, we are answering this question. And I always say to all my, colleagues, as well as juniors, as well as people who are aspiring to become, taking this kind of course, that do what your heart say to do. I mean, it is not like that I have selected this hospital management. That's what you also, get into this. One of the very prime reasons why I have selected this field is that, it will look very, philanthropic that, we want to serve people and this thing. Definitely, but this is this is the only kind of field where you are directly connected to human beings. So that is what, which admires me most, that you are always doing something in your life with a purpose which you have come to this earth. You are always have some kind of a way to give back to your society. So I think this is the only way where you can, help people who are more distress. You can always help them. You can always try to show them a path, because it's not always doctor who do that job. It is all administrators, all, all HODs, all head of the department. They play a very vital role in terms of the entire treatment process of the patient. So gone are those days where administrators are seen. When we have joined our course, people used to say, "What you are going to do in hospital? Hospital is always meant for a doctor or maybe for patient. What is your role?" But suddenly now you realize that after so many years, also the kind of respect, the kind of need which people have for hospital administrators is huge. I mean, now it is said that we are managing the entire show, instead of instead of people used to say that it has to be managed by the doctors or something like that. Although with due respect to them, as our chairman is also a doctor and he is a very notable figure, and he has done the transformation, serious transformation in healthcare industry, which you are seeing today. So I feel that for me, health and hospital is our own individual choices, and I was always inclined toward hospital, to go to hospitals and do this thing.
So do you think physician leaders will have a upper hand over MBAs?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. In my view, any able person who has a very active leadership quality, maybe from medical background or non-medical background, he will do wonders here. So sound financial knowledge, sound your leadership qualities will definitely help you to become a leader here.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Mr. Pandey. I'm going to ask the same question that I've asked to Mr. Jain. Sir, now there is always one thing that my friends would always think, okay, we'll go for hospital or we'll go for health. We'll just try a hand over there. We'll see whichever works and we'll just choose it. But now that the pandemic has not given us that opportunity, what do you think are the traits or the DNA of people who are going to choose health? Like what kind of people do you think should be choosing health?
So I think both, as I mentioned in the beginning, both health and hospital are part of the broader ecosystem of the healthcare service delivery. Yes. So saying that one is better or one is different, both are different, but at the same time, not better or worse. In my case, I think it was pre-decided. I had come to IHMR. I come from I've studied in a rural area, have lived there, had seen that world. It was right there in my mind, and the place where I was studying in Allahabad had some kind of association with my thought process as well, to working in the social sector and the development sector. So probably in my case, it was not a very tough decision to go for taking health, and I have been proud of that decision for sure. One thing which comes to my mind is you need to the only one minor difference in the entire thing is between, if you're thinking of health and hospital. When you go to the hospital side, the individual patients become the key. How you deliver an outcome and value-based care, or whatever you call, bring the terminology, but how you deliver outcome to a particular individual who has come with a particular problem, the hospital becomes very key. When you work in the public health side, it's a community or a general population whether it's a behavior, it may not be typically the medical care. I'll differentiate healthcare and the medical care. So it may not be particularly the medical care, but the general health-seeking behavior or health outcome of the society or community should drive. If it is driving you that way, I think probably public health may be the right place for you. But unless hospitals are functioning properly and delivering their own on their own mandates, even the community outcomes and the societal outcome will not even come into the picture. So what I have seen, let me give you an example from my batch. There are 3 examples. We started with hospitals, and they ended up being in the public health side after taking hospitals, after working for a couple of years. So it's a fungible at one point of time. It's not necessarily that you have to be super cautious that, oh, I chose hospital, what should I do now? Or I chose health, what should I? Probably health to hospital transition may be a little difficult, but I have seen that transition as well, people doing. So don't fret too much. See where your heart is. It's a kind of decision which no one can really guide you. It's your own heart based on what you feel you want to do. Take that call. Probably even after working for a couple of years, you can take a call of take a plunge in another area and do that. So not an issue.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now the question is for both of the panelists. What are the skill sets to be developed by healthcare professionals to be best in the industry, be it health or hospital? What are the particular skill sets that the industry is looking for that has to be developed by students? Mr. Pandey?
So I think there could be a lot we can talk, but one thing which I have learned in my career is your own understanding of data and information and processing it in right way becomes crucial. You know why? Even if you're making a policy pitch to a senior government professional, many times they are upright very dismissive about your ideas or your suggestions. If you back it with the right kind of information and the information which they are ready to believe, so you have to be smart as well. So choosing right kind of information sets, making it really processing it well. And the second thing becomes I posted a couple of days back on my LinkedIn as well, exactly the same thoughts, and which I'm just probably repeating over here, is knowing indicators is not everything. Knowing where to use becomes very key, and whether it can be used in a particular setup or not. And I was talking, I think, couple of minutes sometimes back in the same conversation, whether to use a rate or a ratio, whether to use outcome ratio or a per million case rate case discussion. I think that also becomes very critical. So understanding data, able to process it, making the right use of it. And the last thing which I say, even if you're not doing projections or forecasting related to data, if you don't understand the right information, even in day-to-day management and the operational world, you won't be able to make decisions. So that is one trait which I realized in the public health side, which generally we miss a lot. We don't focus too much. And later on, it really come to haunt us. We should focus a lot on this area for sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Jain, your thoughts on the...
See, when it comes to the skill set, I think I believe in 4-5 things. One is you have to be a kind of a student have to be really flexible. They need to, adaptability has to be there to mold in any kind of a situation, and any kind of situation which requires immediate change, as well as they have to be very collaborative. The approach they should always use has to be collaborative, because this is an industry. If you are not collaborative, you will not be able to succeed. You will not be able to succeed here. So you have to have a collaborative approach towards this thing. And the last thing which I always used to say to everyone is the dedication which they have, the passion which they have to follow for their for the thing which they have chosen. Everybody has chosen their own field. So this is what we have chosen. I mean, this is not something which has been forced on us. If you have chosen this course, if you have chosen this field, you have to be really particular about that. You have to really dedicate it in terms of delivering those kind of an outcome. So these are the 4-5 quality or skill set you should have to excel in this field.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Let's take 2 or 3 questions that we have from the viewers. Yogesh, can you take some questions?
Yeah, for sure. First question is, what do you think about gender disparity in COVID-19 management? So any of the 2 panelists can take this question and answer.
We have not experienced any such kind of gender disparity till now, and probably we are treating our patient equally, we are treating our employee equally, and when you talk about real gender I mean, we have more female employees than male employees. So probably we give equal chances of opportunities to both the genders. I mean, there is no such thing exists in our system.
So just to add, I think I was talking about the data, and recently some analysis was happening even in terms of the COVID-19 patients. And if you realize that if you look at the proportion, more male members are the COVID positive overall in India than compared to the females. Now, one could argue whether it's really more male members are being are positive, or only it's natural that way is happening. So I think before even we talk about the gender balance or anything, it has to be thought through into 2 fronts. One is within the organization institution. Mr. Jain has rightly explained how he's working in his own organization, but also at the community level and the patient and general population level. Through data analysis and other factors, we need to really figure out whether really something is happening at that level or not. Unless we know that, just talking in air will not really work.
Yeah, we can take a couple of questions, like 2 more questions.
Anupriya, please take the next question, Anupriya. Can you?
Yeah, I am. So we have one question which says how to tackle social stigmatization towards healthcare professionals during COVID crisis situation. Can you please share your views on it? Tackling social stigmatization towards healthcare professionals.
Actually, it was when you really talk, it was initially there was a phase where we have also faced this kind of situation. But going forward in a current situation, I mean, in this current month, we are really doing away with that, because it was initially a kind of a panic response, or maybe kind of an immediate response, that if a healthcare worker is there, we are teaching a community also that if you take a proper protective equipment, you have a rarely zero chance of infection. So and we are ensuring that all our employee and staff are taking a proper protection in terms of when they come for a work here. So when you take all standard operating protocols, when you follow those, when you take all precaution, I think it's kind of you need to educate masses about this. I mean, healthcare workers are also human being like us. I always used to tell people when we hear such kind of thing from, let's say, from the community or something, we always go and tell them that if you fall sick, where do you go? I mean, you have to come to a healthcare worker only. And if a healthcare worker is residing in your own rented house, how can you stigmatize that, or how can how can you make an issue out of that? So if relatively when it really comes to you and your healthcare, we are the only people who are going to serve you in a long term. So you have to show empathy to us. You have to be very kind to us, that we are trying to do our level best in this tough time. So I think it's a matter of more educating people about how this is. So in a due course of time, I think it will drain down, or the impact would be going towards the normal. That is what we have. It's our personal experience.
Sir, thank you, sir. We have one question to Mr. Pandey. Mr. Arvind Bhushan, our attendee, has asked a question. The economy loss created due to COVID-19, how much time will it take to reach the break-even point? Or what is the recovery time that will take?
So COVID is one thing where I always say don't come out with your predictions ever. It's going to really make you look like fool at some point of time. It's a situation. See, we are dealing with a situation where you don't know. We still are learning how the virus behaves, how long it can keep spreading, how long will it go. Even the peaks, if we take 1998, 1999, 1918, 1990, 1919 experience of influenza pandemic, the peak came twice, in fact, thrice at certain places. So are we really in the countries where they're claiming that we have peak is over and now we can go to the normal? Is the new normal is really the normal? Can the peak come again and again the infection keeps spreading? So I think it's very difficult to predict a time period. What we need to do, and I link to something, making it like a normalized situation where people start learn to live with it. And what you need to do, you need to talk to your own, if you can, and individuals, and awareness becomes very key. But what is the problem in the awareness and how people will start living with it? Just throwing information doesn't make them aware. You have to, many times, it's a human-centered design, what we call. Ask people the right questions. Let them answer how they will change their own behavior. If they learn to answer those questions, they will change behavior and they will become part of the normal system. Unless the system become normalized, I don't think anyone can really predict how and when the economy can really recover. It's a tough time and it's a difficult one. And sorry for not giving a very clear answer to that.
Thank you, sir. So one last question, if Pratik sir can quickly answer. An attendee has asked, what is your success, mantra for success?
Oh, okay. See, that's a very good question. I always used to say to, the aspiring people, which once upon a time my parents has taught me. And even my father always used to say, and he still believe in that I will answer that in Hindi, that if वो बोलते हैं 5 साल की मेहनत है 50 साल का आराम, या 5 साल का आराम और 50 साल की मेहनत. I mean, you have to choose between those two of things. So if you work hard for 5 years, you will be rest assured that success is going to be there for 50 years. But if you take a rest for 5 years, then 100% you are going to be facing the challenges for the next 50 years. So I always used to tell students that please utilize these 5 or 3 to 4 years which you are already having in hand, in whether you are in institute or what kind of education you are taking. you have to utilize this 5 years very crucially. The moment you utilize this 5 year, I'm 100% sure that you are going to be so successful that we are all experiencing the same. I mean, we have not done anything different from what people have done, but the different what we have done is basically dedicated towards what our vision is. So be passionate, optimize your target, and I think do hard work. That is what the success mantra which we have.
Thank you,
I
sir.
mean,
Thank you.
I agree to that. And grind hard in the beginning should be the key. And for me, first year of my job in a tribal district in Gujarat as a DPM, and a very elderly lady came, put her hand on my head and said that and she used to work as a dai in that tribal village, and she never had any support. And she came and she put her hand on my head and said, in last 40 years, first time I saw someone coming and helping me with, we had done organized something. You know what? Those moments like those, when the common person who doesn't know you, who doesn't have any association with you, they come to you and express their feelings. I think those moments make you what you are, and you should aspire for that. And it can happen in any field. The day you get that first moment, you know you are on right path, and follow that path very carefully. Yeah.
Thank you, panelists, for answering all the remaining questions. Will be answered by us via mail. Over to Yogesh.
Yeah, after this brief and interactive and very insightful discussion with such great speakers, I think here we can conclude our webinar. I would just mention some key suggestions and learnings that alumni Prateek sir and Rahul sir have given today. Starting with Prateek sir's, he actually gave us a very nice insight with what VUCA can also mean about with vision, understanding situation, complex situations, and ability, right? And how a leader has to keep a patience so that he can lead a team very nicely in the COVID situation, where we don't know what is happening in next 1 minute. And the doctor relationship would be good because the therapeutic situation has to be governed by the doctor itself. And and he also came up with a great line that do what your heart says, or I should say, do what moves you. And coming to Rahul sir's points, he actually gave the motivational areas that be updated and be motivated in such areas, in such situations, understand data and public policies, and keep the updated information and only filter that what is only useful for you. And this time, not you can't learn everything in a day, so it will take a time. It will take some period of time, but learnings in this situation would help you in future. And he also came up with a great point that we even now and after the post-COVID situation, we really need to work seriously and invest in public health sector for future, so that we can be prepared for upcoming pandemics in future. So I would really thank you, Prateek sir and Rahul sir, for giving us such precious time from your busy schedules. You both are our idols in health sectors and hospital sectors, and I hope we would get more chances to interact with more alumni like you in future and learn more from you. And also, I would like to thank all the attendees for the support and questions they put up. Hopefully, we would conduct more such meaningful and insightful webinars and you all in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for inviting us. I think it's always pleasure to talk to all of you, and I think you all are going to do a very good job. And lastly, I just wanted to say to all of you that any kind of support required from our end, 24/7, we are just a call away, and maybe an email can do us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Rahul sir.
Thank you.
So much.